Peppa finds a strange pink crystal in the garden that glows with soft, frightening light. George touches the crystal and his eyes become completely white for several seconds. Mummy Pig cooks breakfast, but food starts levitating above plates without any explanation. Daddy Pig reads newspaper, words in which change by themselves right before his eyes. The family house begins to vibrate slightly, walls covered with strange geometric patterns. Peppa looks in mirror and sees her reflection with pink crystalline eyes. Toys in nursery start moving and arranging themselves into perfect geometric shapes. Grandpa Pig visits and speaks mysterious phrases about ancient powers and forces. The garden behind house transforms into crystalline cave with shimmering pink walls. Granny Pig bakes peanut dough glows from inside with unnatural pink light. Phone rings, but instead of voice, only strange crystalline melodies are heard. Peppa and George play hide and seek, but their shadows remain visible through walls. Mummy Pig waters flowers, which instantly transform into pink crystalline structures. Daddy Pig tries to start car, but it levitates above ground in pink glow. Peppa's school becomes huge crystal, inside which normal lessons continue as usual. Peppa's friends come to play, but their voices echo from parallel dimension. Family dinner passes in complete silence, while crystals grow from the table. Peppa goes to bed, but her bed slowly rises toward the ceiling. At night, whole house glows with pink light, visible from outer space. A sunny day illuminated Peppa Pig's house, but something felt wrong. Peppa and George were playing in their room when strange sounds came from outside. Mummy Pig was making breakfast, but her movements seemed mechanical. Daddy Pig was reading his newspaper, but his eyes never blinked. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Susie Sheep stood at the doorstep, wearing a pink suit with a triangle mask. Susie silently handed Peppa a pink card with symbols on it. Peppa took the card and her eyes lit up with strange gleam. George hid behind the bed in fear, sensing danger. Mummy Pig stopped cooking and turned toward the children. Daddy Pig slowly folded his newspaper and stood up. All family members stared at Peppa with empty eyes. Peppa left the house, following Susie down a dark path. George ran after them, but his legs became heavy. The forest around them grew darker and scarier. Trees whispered something sinister in the wind. Ahead appeared a large pink building with black windows. Inside the building, Peppa saw other familiar characters in pink suits. They all stood in a row like little soldiers. Their faces were hidden behind masks with geometric shapes. The air was heavy and frightening. Peppa felt she was trapped. Strange games began, but they weren't fun at all. The first game was red light, green light, with a giant doll. The doll turned around and its eyes glowed red. Those who moved disappeared in pink smoke. Peppa stood motionless, trembling with fear. The second game required cutting shapes from cookies. Peppa's hooves were shaking, but she tried her best. Other participants were nervous and made mistakes. Pink guards silently watched the process. Time was running out and tension was rising. The third game was tug-of-war over an abyss. Peppa found herself on a team with strangers. The rope was slippery and dangerous. The losing team fell into darkness below. Peppa pulled the rope with all her strength. The fourth game was marbles with cruel rules. Peppa had to knock out her opponent's marble. The loser disappeared forever in pink mist. Peppa played carefully but decisively. Her little heart beat with fear. The fifth game required crossing a glass bridge. Some panels were strong, others were fragile. Peppa walked slowly, testing each step. Behind her, other participants fell down. She reached the end, trembling. The final game was the most terrifying, Squid Game. Peppa had to reach the finish line. Her opponent tried to stop her at any cost, but Peppa remembered home and family. She gathered all her courage and strength. Peppa won the final game and woke up at home. It was just a terrible nightmare. George was sleeping nearby. Mummy and Daddy were alive. The sun was shining through the window. Everything was fine. Peppa realized that home and family are the most important things. Sunny day slowly gave way to twilight. In Peppa Pig's house, everything was as usual. Daddy Pig was reading a newspaper. Mummy Pig was watering flowers on the windowsill. Peppa and George were playing in the living room, building a tall tower of blocks. Suddenly, Peppa heard a strange, barely audible whisper. It came from behind the wall, as if someone was trying to say something, but the words were indistinct. Peppa listened intently. The whisper repeated, a little louder this time, and Peppa felt a slight tingling in her ears. She looked around, but no one seemed to hear anything. George continued to play enthusiastically. Mummy Pig was humming a tune, and Daddy Pig was peacefully dozing. Peppa approached the wall from where the whisper came. She put her ear to the cold surface. The whisper became clearer, but still remained incomprehensible. It sounded like many voices speaking at once, intertwining and merging into a single, disturbing hum. Peppa felt her heart beat faster. She tried to call Mummy Pig, but her voice caught in her throat. The whisper became more insistent, as if trying to penetrate her mind. Peppa recoiled from the wall, feeling dizzy. She thought she saw shadows moving at the edges of her vision, but when she tried to focus, they disappeared. She closed her eyes, trying to get rid of the intrusive sound, but it only intensified, turning into a cacophony that filled all her thoughts. Peppa opened her eyes. The world around her had changed. Colors became dull and sounds muffled. Mummy Pig and Daddy Pig continued with their activities, but now they seemed distant and alien, like actors in a poorly staged play. George sat on the floor, his eyes empty, and a strange, serene smile frozen on his face. Peppa tried to touch him, but her hand passed through his body as if he were a ghost. She realized that she too had changed. She no longer felt her body, no longer heard her breathing. She was part of this whisper, part of this silence. She was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. She watched as Mummy Pig and Daddy Pig continued to live their ordinary lives, unaware that their children had disappeared, dissolved into this whisper in their own distorted world. The whisper continued. Now it was her own voice, a voice she didn't recognize. It called others, those who were like her, those who had also dissolved into this silent presence. And they came. The shadows grew denser, filling the house, filling the world. Mummy Pig and Daddy Pig continued to smile, unaware that they were no longer alone. Something was with them, something that whispered in their ear, something that slowly but surely took them, and soon they too will become part of this whisper. A new, unusually quiet windmill appeared in Peppa Pig's garden. It was a gift from Daddy Pig, initially bringing novelty and calm. Its blades rotated slowly, emitting a barely audible, lulling hum. Peppa and George were delighted. Mummy Pig found it peaceful. No one could have imagined this harmless object would become the source of something deeply unsettling. Mummy Pig began spending more time near the windmill. She listened to its monotonous hum, claiming to hear whispers, then instructions. Her speech became fragmented. She forgot daily chores, her gaze often distant, as if seeing something no one else could. George, mesmerized by the spinning blades, watched them for hours. He grew unnaturally quiet, his eyes wide and glassy. He started mimicking the windmill's slow, rhythmic motion, as if guided by an invisible force. Peppa was the first to notice the growing unease. She tried speaking with Mummy Pig and George, but their replies were hollow, often just repeated phrases that seemed to echo the windmill's hum. She felt increasingly isolated, surrounded by her family but unable to reach them. Daddy Pig dismissed her concerns at first, blaming fatigue or new interests. He tried to keep normal routines, but their detachment became too obvious and disturbing to ignore. Then a new neighbor arrived, Puss in Boots, styled like a Peppa Pig character. Curious and adventurous, he was immediately drawn to the windmill, but unlike the pig family, he sensed its sinister presence. He tried to engage with them, but their altered behavior made it nearly impossible. The windmill's influence deepened. Its hum filled every room. The family's movements aligned with its rhythm. They began seeing strange patterns in everyday objects, interpreting them as part of the windmill's truth.
One night, Peppa, lying on the top bunk, noticed George was awake below. His eyes reflected a faint, pulsing light from the windmill outside. He whispered the same phrases Mummy Pig had repeated earlier. His voice was calm, flat, stripped of childlike emotion. Horror gripped Peppa. George was no longer himself. Daddy Pig finally realized the depth of the change. He tried to dismantle the windmill to break its hold, but Mummy Pig and George stood silently in his way. They didn't resist physically, but their stillness, their empty expressions, made him hesitate. One by one, the family was absorbed into the windmill's reality. They didn't vanish, but their minds were gone, taken. What remained were empty vessels, moving by the distorted logic of the windmill's hum. There was no violence, just quiet, complete assimilation. Seizing a moment when Puss in Boots distracted them, Peppa ran. She turned back to see her family, vacant-eyed, moving in sync with the windmill. The house itself seemed to vibrate with its hum.